Hey, I recently did a full spectrum preparedness video about security, and I made a comment about roads that kind of made it sound like I was saying that in the event something should happen, the Marauders are going to flow out of the city using highways and roads, and they're going to come attack us Mad Max style. While that's not inaccurate, it's not 100% correct either, and it's the complexities of the situation after a SHTF event are much more complex and much more nuanced. That's what I want to talk about today. Hey everybody, welcome back to Grumpy Acres. Like I said in the intro, I said something in the last full spectrum preparedness video that made it sound like that we're all at risk to marauders, and where you put your house is going to dictate whether you have to deal with them or not. And it's not that simple. That was overly generalized and way too simplistic. And I want to talk about that now. Here's what I said. This is what I said.
The reason why the conversation about roads is important is because they act as avenues of approach, and they allow people to get from these large population centers out away from them. And we want to be as far away as we can get from a major highway as possible for two reasons. Number one, in the event that something bad happens, there's going to be a mass exodus out of these cities, and they're going to flow out of the cities on these highways, and then they will stream off onto side roads.
Like I said, that statement was accurate, just way overly generalized, and could lead some people to have concerns about something that I don't think is really as big as what people make it out to be. There's a trope in prepper fiction that the second something happens, the Marauders are going to head out on the highways, and they're going to come find these isolated places. They're going to raid them and take everything and burn them down, and it makes for good fiction. But the reality of the situation is much different. In the event of an SHTF event, chances are you're going to actually see people flowing into the cities. You're going to see people become refugees going from rural areas into cities. Historically, if you look at it, that's been the case. Even recently in Ukraine, there was an article recently about how the people had moved from the rural communities at the edge of the fighting into the city because it was safer. And you can go back and you see that throughout history. You saw it in the civil wars in South America during the 80s. You saw it in Vietnam. You saw it in World War II. People are going to go where they can find security. It's the reason why castles popped up. Castles were not only for the royalty, they were for the people that lived in that community. These people would build a city around a castle so they could retreat into the castle in the event of an attack by hostile forces. Now, it's not just wars that cause these kind of movements. If you look at the Great Depression in the United States, there was a massive migration from the rural South to the industrial North. And the reason that happened was because that's where the jobs were. So in the event of wars, people will migrate to population centers because they afford security. In the event of financial hard times, people will move from depressed rural areas into major metropolitan areas and search for jobs. So if I believe what I say I believe, that's probably what's going to happen first. Now, we need to talk about black swan events, because black swan events change the whole dynamic there. Now, what about black swan event? If you don't know what that is, it's an event that's really impossible to predict. A nuclear war, pandemic. You know, we go back to the video I did on security, and there were three things. There were possible, probable, and imminent. So the possible, yes, it's possible, and we need to think about it, but we don't put it high on our priority list because even though it could happen, there's not a very good likelihood of it, right? So yes, a nuclear war could happen. A meteor could hit the city. a massive pandemic could break out. Even the what we went through in 2020 and 2021, that would be considered a black swan event because it was unpredicted. Nobody saw it coming, or very few people saw it coming. Now, when these big black swan events happen, big population centers become death traps. People start flowing out of them in great numbers, and we could see it. We knew somebody that was from Sarajevo, and she lived there during the Yugoslavian Civil War. And once the city looked like it was going to be surrounded and put under siege, people fled that city as quickly as they could. Now, most of these people, and this is not just in Sarajevo, but this is just any event like that. Most of these people, their entire plan is to not be here. They want to be someplace else. They want to be not where the problem is. They haven't given a lot of thought to it. Now, mind you, this is most of them. I know some of you live in the city and you've got plans for this, but most people do not have plans, and they become refugees. They don't have a landing spot, and they don't know where they're going, so they become refugees. Now, let's take a step back and let's talk about non-black swan events. Now, this is just me personally, and this is my opinion on the matter. Any event that takes place that is a SHT event, the one thing that is affected in every single case is the infrastructure. That's one of the reasons why here at Grumpy Acres we are trying to get untethered from that infrastructure as much as possible. Eventually we want to be our own power company. Eventually we want to be our own water company. Eventually we want to produce enough food that we can sustain ourselves. We're not there yet, but that's the plan. Now, if the infrastructure starts falling apart due to whatever, personally, I think it's going to be economic hard times. What you're going to see is you're going to see criminal elements take on that role of marauder that we were talking about. They're going to move out of the depressed areas where they are, looking for goods, looking for items they hold valuable, food, water, whatever, guns, you name it, there's no telling. Look back at the riots that took place back in 2019. How many people did you see walking out of stores with big screen TVs that were completely useless for them? You're going to see that. So we need to plan for that. We need to understand that as far as marauders go, that's probably what we're going to be looking at. In fact, I'm going to say it's imminent because we can look back historically in places that have had economic downturns and the infrastructure started suffering for it, power blackouts, all that. What we see is criminal elements going out into the suburbs and the country looking for things and robbing people and committing crimes. So that's going to be the nascent marauder that is that trope in prepper fiction. The criminal elements that are going on. And if you live in the suburbs, you really need to pay attention to where your house is located in respect to these different roads coming out of the city center, because you're going to be the first place that they hit. You're a much more convenient target, and you're going to be much more, in their eyes, you're going to be much more affluent than somebody that lives out in the country. So they're going to hit targets of opportunity first, then they will move on and move further away as they deplete the resources where they're operating out of. If you live in the country, this is where the comment I made about being close to highways and paved roads come in. This is where we start talking about that. Because the further you are off of those paved roads, the less likely you are to have somebody stumble upon your property and have a crime of opportunity and decide to rob you. Now, it doesn't mean you're safe, doesn't mean that this is not going to happen to you if things start falling apart in an SHTF situation. Marauders may find your place. In fact, the most industrious people out there, the criminally minded people, they will form gangs and they will purposely go out and find places that they think have food and they think have resources that will keep them alive. And rural homesteads historically are where they attack. Now, let's add a political aspect to that. If we look at South Africa during its civil war. If we look at Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, there's a whole political and racial aspect there that adds a completely new set of problems for homeowners, rural landowners, people that live in the city, whatever. We need to start thinking about that. Now, all this that I'm talking about is a precursor to whenever we see the big hordes of people coming out of the cities as big columns of refugees. Those big columns of refugees are going to be full of criminal elements too. And you're going to see, as they move through areas, you're going to see that criminal element use that as an opportunity to go off on the side roads and take what they want. Not necessarily what they need, but take what they want. So we need to plan for that, and we need to be ready to defend ourselves in any way and manner that may seem fit. Now, this whole thing, this whole discussion here, the reason why I'm having it is because it is a prime example of why we need to build community. All right? The discussion was about full spectrum preparedness and the security aspect of where we place our property and in relationship to roads and stuff. Having a community in place, once you've got your property, will allow you to, A, have more security, because just like people move into the city, there's more security in numbers. So if you've got a community where you are that will help each other, then you're more secure just by its mere existence. It allows us to get intelligence. One of the things, like I said, the probability of a black swan event happening is not very high. So a lot of these things that are possible or probable and imminent, we will see coming. Anybody that's paying attention should be able to see these things. And our circle is going to allow us to get information from other sources. And if we've done it right, our circle's working with other circles around us as the greater community that is able to get information from much further away and get it to us in a timely manner for us to use. The last part of that is communications. And we haven't talked about that in the full spectrum preparedness aspect. I did talk about it a little bit on why you should have your ham license. But we want to set up these lines of communication so that we can get this intel, we can talk to people, we can send security alerts, do whatever. So as you can see, the placement of our house in conjunction with roads and everything is just one small piece of the puzzle that allows us to handle any of these things that come our way. And even if a SHTF event hasn't happened, it's still important, because if you're living in rural America these days, property crimes are on the rise. With the fentanyl epidemic that's going on and the increase in property crimes going on, it's something that we have to deal with. People from the inner cities are going into the suburbs now. You hear about it in the news all the time in these big blue dots where the suburbs are becoming less and less safe. So these are things that we have to think about even before an SHTF event happens, and even before the Marauders happen, and even before we reach the point where it's Mad Max and we're living inside a prepper fiction book. Well, at that point, I guess it'd be a nonfiction book, right? These are the things we need to think of. All right. I hope you guys found this entertaining. I really hope you found it informative and it gives you something to think about. What I want you to do, if I missed something, put it in the comments down below. Tell me what I missed. Share with the community your ideas on how to address this and how to look at this. Share this video with somebody that might need it. You might know somebody that is looking for property, or they have these concerns and they've discussed it with you. Give them some more food for thought. I mean, the more information people have, the better decisions they can make. Hit that thumbs up button so that YouTube knows that you like this and that you want to see this see this type of content more often. Hit that notification bell, because we're going to have more videos coming out, not only on full spectrum preparedness. We're going to have it coming out on the homesteading, and Yoda, as soon as she's better, is going to start doing more cooking videos and other side of the homestead videos for you. All right? Go out there. Go pursue a life done free today. All right? Take care, folks. Thanks, Milo.